All right, here we are then with our last but by no means least speaker of the day, bringing us home and rounding out CEA 4.0 across the 2 days. You've got Kevin Strickland talking to you about making your own weather. I'm really interested to see what this is going to be, actually. So, Kevin, over to you.
Well, hello everyone. Nice to be with you today. So, you guys ready to make your own weather? Well, we'll get started. Just to tell you a little bit about me, my name is Kevin Strickland. I'm the sales manager for BioTherm. We've been providing greenhouse climate technology for 44 years. Over the last decade plus, we've been doing more of the cooling, dehumidification, total CEA type of environment. Today we're going to talk about things to think about when you're considering making your own weather. So to just touch on a little bit about the current state of CEA, over $10 billion has been invested in the CEA industry over the last 5 years. It's pretty much been evenly split between greenhouses and indoor warehouse facilities. We'll talk a little bit about the disadvantages and advantages of both before we get into making your own weather. So in an indoor warehouse type facility, typically the advantage is you're going to see higher yield per square foot. It's obviously a less physical footprint as you're going high instead of large. And a lot of times they can be located in urban areas. So, quicker routes to the stores, fresher lettuce, that type of stuff. You typically have higher control capabilities and less water usage, and it is a more predictable yield. Disadvantages, it is 6 to 10 times more expensive in operational costs because you have to control the climate 24/7, 365 days a year. Requires more lighting, which a lot of times can produce unwanted heat that fights the HVAC system. It does have a higher carbon footprint, and it is more risk to investors. It's not a well-known commodity in a sense that there hasn't been an amazing amount of success stories as far as sustainability. There are some, and it's getting better. So that's the future looks bright, but there's going to be some stumbling blocks on the way. Advantages and disadvantages of greenhouses. So you can utilize the outside climate when applicable. Most lighting companies, for example, are trying to mimic the free light bulb in the sky. Well, this allows you to utilize that free light bulb in the sky. Less expensive to operate and build. You can utilize evaporative cooling pads to minimize cost if the weather's right. Not all locations can use evap pads, but there's definitely plenty of them out there. Typically going to give you less energy usage, and typically only supplemental lights are needed. And it is less of a risk for investors because this is a known commodity. People have been growing this crops in greenhouses for years. So little less risk. Disadvantages, you will get less yield per square foot. Greenhouses are not as well insulated, obviously, and the outside weather can affect the inside climate. So it's important to be able to create your own weather to combat that. Greenhouse locations are typically farther away from urban centers, but lately we've seen a lot of greenhouses go up on rooftops or they're within 60 miles. So not a huge disadvantage because you can still be closer to it. Now we're going to get into talking about methods of creating your own weather. You have two things. You have mechanical systems and you have your delivery system. So your mechanical systems are going to be your chillers, boilers. Some people use heat pumps. You have 2 and 4 pipe hydronic systems. You have DX rooftop units and CO2 enrichment. These are things you see a chiller here. This is some boilers and CO2 system as well. This is another version of a natural gas chiller. Delivery systems. So you've got hydronic heating, root zone vine crop heating. Now, as you see here, water is 3,500 times more efficient in carrying energy than air. So meaning your hydronic heating systems, your root zone vine crop, as you see here, you put tubing right on the benches. It's conductive heat. It's immediate. It's on demand. You don't have the need for these boilers to be running necessarily all day long to try to give you heat. So hydronic heating is the most efficient by far. You've got other options. Our air handlers, for example, these things down here. This is for more of the cooling, dehumidification. You can do heat through there, CO2 delivery as well. These are a great option, and we usually put them down underneath here. through polyduct, and that way it's going up through the crop, and the root zone is actually getting the effect of the cool, dry CO2 enriched air. You have forced air heating, which is an option. It's not the most efficient option, but it also depends on where you put it. If you put your forced air heating up top, that's not going to be as efficient. Hot air rises, so you're going to have to heat those a lot. But when it's coming from below, the root zone is actually getting that right away. So it works a lot better depending on where you're putting that forced air heating. Irrigation tempering, that's another thing that people don't think about. That also helps control your thing. If your water's coming in too hot in the summer and you cool it down, that's going to create a little cooling effect for your plants. Standalone dehumidification, that's another one that usually is used in indoors or warehouse type environments to complement the HVAC system. Some HVAC systems can handle dehumidification, but most of those in indoors are usually require some standalone dehumidification, which sometimes add unwanted heat, which is something that you've got to combat with your HVAC system. Humidification, that's also another big need in especially in the lettuce and vegetable world. So you can provide that as well. Airflow movement, that is one of the most important things to provide a homogeneous crop. If you've got the right airflow movement going through, it'll move all the cool, dry, CO2 enriched air around the facility. So airflow is one of the more important things to contemplate when you're thinking about your new facility or your retrofit for that matter. So one of the things I want to talk to you about is finding your energy balance. This is crucial to think about when you're building a new facility and thinking about expansion. One of the first things is energy modeling to determine sizing and design. A lot of people skip this step, and it's unfortunate because having a model done of your facility in the location that it's in is one of the more important things you got to think about. This will tell you the need for HVAC, the load that you'll have. It'll tell you the sun if you're doing greenhouses. It'll tell you the PAR. It'll tell you how much light you're going to get, how often you will need to run your HVAC. We had a customer in Texas who did not think an evaporative cooling pad would work. We did some energy modeling and found out 4 months out of the year he could use that. That saved them a ton of money. So those are things that will help you figure out what's the best way to operate your facility. Next thing is OpEx costs. Those drive everything. Consider OpEx savings over CapEx. I know a lot of people, as they're thinking about building and they're trying to save as much money and they can't get enough investor money, and that really struggle, and so they go the cheaper route up front. But what does that do? Typically, when you go the cheaper route, it's going to raise your OpEx cost because it's not as efficient. Those are reoccurring costs every month that you have to pay, same as labor. Those are all things that you have to consider. So spending a little bit more upfront on CapEx helps you out in the long run to be sustainable. If you can get your OpEx costs, and I'll show you a few things in the next slide of things to help lessen your OpEx cost, that's going to make you more sustainable for the future. So it's very important to think about operation over initial startup. The next thing is make sure your location has electricity and fuel capacity for expansion. We run into people a lot of times really trying to get the land. They see a piece of land, it's cheap, and they start thinking about it. And okay, we're going to put up an acre now, or we're going to put up 2 acres now. And they don't necessarily look at, okay, how much electricity is it, 3-phase, single phase, what is it, how much fuel do we have, natural gas capabilities. I can't tell you how many times we've been where companies have actually put in deposits and then find out they're short on electricity for their expansion, and it just stops the project altogether, and it becomes a hassle for everybody that nobody wants to deal with that. And so make sure when you're talking to whether your builders or your HVAC companies, that you're talking about your future expansion plans, because that is very important to start off with getting your facility ready for expansion. You can put a system in for phase one and have everything sized to just stub out and connect to that, instead of making whole separate systems and costing yourself more money and them not working together. So it's very important to have redundancy in your systems, and have a knowledge of what your whole plan looks like in the end, so you can make sure the land you buy has enough capacity. You don't get in a situation where natural gas won't be run for 5 to 6 years. So that's very important to think about ahead of time. Next thing I want to talk about is work with experienced companies in your area. And what I mean by your area is the same country. Most of We've been going around and getting a lot of opportunities from projects that were phase one was already built from an overseas company that promised a turnkey solution. You got to think about turnkey solutions. Is it truly turnkey? No, nobody's truly turnkey. They don't make everything they do. They're providing vendors that have that. You want to make sure that the people who, especially in the HVAC sector, that they know what they're doing with plants involved. We run up against people all the time that are using engineers that have never done anything with plants, and those plants transpire a lot. You cannot get somebody that's done an office building to jump into something like this and expect them to get it right. So make sure they're experienced in what you're actually doing. The other problems that we see a lot is the sizing is not really proper for the location that you're in. If a company is used to doing systems for an area that's overseas somewhere, doesn't mean it's the same climate as here. And it could be drastically different. In the US, you have basically each state can have a different climate. Sometimes in the states, you can have different climates. So it's very important to get somebody that knows your area well and that understands what your problems are. The other thing is working with somebody in your time zones is crucial. If you have to wait multiple hours before you're ever going to be able to talk to anybody, it's hard. They're also dealing in metric system, which, if we were in metric, great, but we're not over here. So, these are the things that we have to think about. It's been a problem for people to make the conversions and deal with that hassle. And then you have to wait 2 to 3 weeks for parts sometimes. So working with a company that's in the US is crucial because you can get parts overnighted. You can have people local that understand what you're going through. So it's really important to work with a group of people, especially. So when you're trying to start a new build, you need to grab those people together and find the people that work well together. So, for example, we have a what I call Team America. That's basically a North American group of people that supply lighting, greenhouses, construction GCs, lighting companies, all that HVAC companies that work together and have been working together for a while to provide the best solution possible, to really provide something that no systems are fighting against each other. They all have to work in harmony to create a nice environment. So when you're thinking about that, just make sure you're thinking about that, because typically when you're going overseas, you will run into those issues. Now, some of the technologies that are available to offset OpEx, high efficiency boilers, as you see here, you know, there's high mass boilers. These are low mass boilers. Low mass boilers are typically a lot more efficient. You're going to be running in the 92 to 98% efficiency range. That is huge. If natural gas prices go up, or logistics, there's a war somewhere, and all of a sudden everything is crazy, the people who are operating at the highest efficiency are going to be the most sustainable. These will also be used for heating or reheat for your dehumidification. High-tech control systems. This is another crucial part. Not all control companies are the same. You need somebody. These are complex systems that are all trying to work together to create one objective. You need to have the control companies that can do that effectively and can utilize all the latest technology to utilize the potential to use outside weather and stuff like that. So getting the right control system is imperative. Irrigation tempering. Again, I talked a little bit about that before. Helping your HVAC load by doing something at the root zone with the water. Dissolved oxygen. This is another big thing that's last 7 years has been really a crucial thing for the CEA world. Adding the high levels of dissolved oxygen into your irrigation lines will increase yield. Some of our lettuce growers have seen double the size of heads of lettuce, went from 5-ounce heads to 10-ounce heads of lettuce just by adding DO. It'll shorten grow time. It'll require less nutrients because there'll be no drain to waste. They'll take up everything you give them. So that's a huge thing to maximize your cost. And they actually say it tastes better. It's sweeter and juicier. So um, CO2 enrichment. Now, this is from all our growers that we deal with, CO2 enrichment is the most effective way to produce a better crop. And there's ways to do it, different ways to do it. You can do tank CO2, or you can create your own. As you see over here, this is our CO2 generator that basically extracts the CO2 from the boiler exhaust. So when you're heating or when you're reheating for dehu, which will pretty much be all year long, you're creating free CO2. It's just a question of whether you want to extract it and put it back into the greenhouse. We had a customer that had bought our boilers because they were spending $150,000 in CO2 tanks a year. They bought our boilers strictly for CO2 production. They're not even using heat or reheat, but it only cost them $60,000. They saved $90,000 a year by creating their own CO2. So if you guys are using a tank, there's better options out there that will save you money operationally. Again, one of the other things we do, natural gas chillers. These are a really good option, not only because they qualify for the Inflation Reduction Act, but which will give you a 40% tax credit. So even though these are more expensive than air-cooled chillers, the efficiency that they operate is incredible. Plus the 40%, it makes it really more affordable right at the moment. Great thing about this and why we utilize these is because we can recapture the heat from the chillers that they're putting off. And then we reuse that for either your heat or for your reheat of your dehu system. So again, we try to get products that are going to do other things for the system as well. One of the other big issues is labor costs, right? So doing automation is something also that will help reduce or offset OpEx. Again, it's a little expensive up front, but again, we're talking about how do you be sustainable for the long term. Solar and other renewable energy options, they're hard to get through. We've had a lot of opportunities too, but they always seem to go back to fossil fuels typically. But if you can do that, it's definitely a way to save some money. Water cooled LED lights. These are something that is another thing that gets rid of that unwanted heat and helps the HVAC load. You got water going through the lights to basically cool down all that unwanted heat. And another things that people don't think about is utility rebates. There's certain states out there, especially in the north, that will give amazing rebates for using high efficiency boilers. Even they'll give you $1 per pint for water removed after a certain amount. Those are things that can help offset some things. And grants, although this is CapEx, there's a lot of grants if you're retrofitting and making your facility more efficient. USDA REAP program is a great one that will give you 50% of the project cost to go more efficient. So those are things that you should think about as you're going through and deciding what technology to bring to you, because always think about OpEx and what's going to be the best way to give you the best crop, but that's not going to cost you the most amount of money. That's our motto, is trying to get you the best system and the best crop at the most affordable operational cost. Now, what I want to show you now is one of our solutions that does it, and this will explain our thoughts on the best way to actually provide a homogeneous climate for you guys. So we've created this system that sort of goes up against either a gable wall or the outside wall of an indoor warehouse facility. This is not the only option, but this is one of the options. So right here, you've got the insect screen. This green part is the evaporative cooling pad. This yellow is the free CO2 that you're getting. These are our supply and return pipes that are going to our air handlers. So you've got this blue is the cooling coil, the red is the heating coil. So as we bring in the air coming through here, it's going to go through this cooling coil, and it's going to typically drop the temperature to hit dew point so we can extract the water. And then it's going to go over the heating coil. That's going to provide the heat or the cooling, the temperature that you want the greenhouse to be at. This is what it's going to provide while pulling out the water, as well as also putting out the CO2. Now there's a bank of fans here that are going to blow this air out of the polyduct and up through the root zone. Like I was saying, you want to get the root zone the best, most effect of it. So Blowing this up through the bottom will get the whole plant that cool, dry CO2 enriched air. Or if you're doing humidification, it'll give you the humid air going through that. But going through the root zone is the most effective option for this. What does it also do? It also takes all the equipment out of the space. You have nothing over here creating shade. Now, as you've been watching it, it's going through heating, cooling, dehumidification. Those are all closed mode stuff. Well, say the weather is great outside. Okay, well, let's open up. Let's save some money. This is a lot cheaper to operate than these are. So when the weather outside is working, you can just start either ventilating the air, doing fresh air blending. The next option would be to cool with the evaporative cooling pad. So you'll see that we're basically creating a climate chamber in here. And depending on which louvers are open, up here, it's going to go through a different mode. This allows you really to provide whatever environment is needed, either through mechanical or through outside weather, making this a very efficient system as you go through and provide. And again, the idea of never having equipment in here, never having vendors having to go through your facility to do any servicing seems to be one of the biggest benefits that growers like. So this is a modular and it's expandable. We can, like I was telling you before, if you have expansion plans, we'll create it to where it's just you just keep adding on. This pest and pollination prevention can be positive pressure, conserve CO2, uniform stress-free environment. And this does work for new construction and retrofit. So um, this is our solution to the controlled environments, for the CEA world. So it is. We try to look at everything of how it works together, and making sure that nothing is fighting each other, and to give you the opportunity to basically look um, at your facility as a whole and say, okay, these are all working in conjunction with each other, in harmony with each other, and we're providing the right size equipment. So, again, the key to this is sizing your equipment properly for your area and getting the right technology to do that. With all that stuff that I just had in there, you have boilers, you have chillers. So again, you have the ability to do irrigation pre-cool or preheat with the equipment you already have. You can add dissolved oxygen in that system to make the irrigation to make the plants grow. So you got to find the right solutions and work with the right team in order to figure out the best way for your environment. Now, that video showed it on a greenhouse. Those do work in the right types of indoor. If it's more of a warehouse facility, that can still work. We may not use the polyduct. We don't need to with our airflow systems. There's also ways that if the arcade just does not work for you at all, we can put the air handlers inside the space or in the walls. And the great thing about it is it's not ducting. You won't have huge ducts everywhere. But again, because all of our stuff is hydronic, you won't have to deal with the ducts and cleaning the ducts and critters and all that stuff that tends to live in ducting. So there's a lot of ways that we can do, and there's different options. So it's really about finding what's right for your facility. Now, who are we there for? We're doing the real people, real plants, and real growth. We've been doing this for 44 years, and some of our growers have been with us for all 44 years. These two guys here have been for a while. And this is the woman right here who went from 5-ounce heads of lettuce to 10-ounce heads of lettuce. So we've got a lot of history out there, well respected in the world. We've got projects all over the world. So we're not just local. So I guess that's it. Hope you guys are ready to make your own weather, and let's do it together. So if you guys have any needs after this, or questions, we'd be glad to consult with you guys. So please hit us up at info@biothermsolutions.com. So I guess I hit it right on the mark. 33 seconds left, so that's not too bad, I guess.
You did good. You did good. So, yeah, I see we're also joined perhaps by my illustrious colleague Derek, who's finished over in room 2. So, yeah, it's Derek. If you'd like to join us, please do feel free if you're there.
Hi guys.
Hey, how you doing? You all right? Yeah, just a couple of quick questions, I suppose. I was interested when you talked about the energy balance, as kind of newer technologies feed in, what do you think some of those newer technologies are that are going to help people to find that right energy balance for them?
Well, I mean, it's really about efficiencies and not having things fighting against each other, but it's really about finding the group that works well together, that's going to provide a whole facility that's going to be in harmony with each other. One of the things that, the renewable energies, once those become a little bit easier and more affordable, I think that's going to be a big sector. For example, we're working with somebody that has access to an aquifer that the water's cold enough to get rid of chillers. It's about thinking outside the box of like, okay, can you do this? What's the, it's all physics, it's all science, right? Can this be done? It's having the open mind to develop things. We do a lot of R&D of things trying to improve, whether it's existing technology or trying to invent new technologies that's going to help. It's about innovation, and it's about just keep moving forward with trying to find efficiencies. Because, like I said, OpEx is key to being sustainable. And if you can find ways to minimize that OpEx, you're going to be a lot better off.
Thanks. Derek, anything you wanted to ask since you're here?
I think the bane of most growers' lives is interoperability for different systems. And I was coming from stage two, starting, oh, blip there. I was on stage two chatting to other guys, and they've got radical clean solutions. And there was a guy the other day with that. And when you're talking about creating your own weather, so airflow, it's integrating everything in together into a platform that you can control. And I think going forward, I think it'd be interesting to see if there's this kind of standard operability system we're walking towards. So lots of things can come plug in and play, rather than having to have 6 operating systems for different bits, which is a pain in the ass, I think, for most
Yeah,
people.
it definitely can be, and that's really why I discussed, like, it's crucial to find the team one that works together, that knows each other. We have our part of our teams are, it's got the water irrigation side of it, it's got the HVAC, it's got the greenhouse or the GC for the construction side of it. And everything we do, one of the things we talk about is, okay, is this going to affect you? Or is your system going to affect ours? And that's crucial to have that planned out. And I think the control systems, again, as they have to wait for the technology to be built and to be put into place before they can figure out how to control it necessarily. So I think that's why time controls are so important, because if you can get all those, it's a very complex system. You're creating an environment. I mean, think about that, what that has to entail. Engineering is really crucial on that. And having an engineering firms in all of these companies that know what it is to do it in this industry is crucial. Do not go outside this industry. You will just be dealt with problems. I see it all day long. Stay in the industry, please.
Yeah, they'll say it's cheaper, but in the long run, it definitely
It
is
will
not.
never be cheaper. Never be. Never be cheaper.
Cool.
I mean, on that note, I just wonder, you sort of talked about at the beginning of the presentation the sort of the indoor warehouse or vertical farming and greenhouse farming, and one of the things that we've talked a lot about is kind of hybridization of those two, right? We've got a bit of both, where they feed into each other in useful ways, and whether what sort of relationships these kind of technologies could have in a hybridized system like that.
Well, I mean, so again, it's all our systems will work no matter whether you're hybrid or not. It's just about, I mean, each grower grows differently. That's why it's hard to standardize anything in this industry, really, because each grower has a different thought on how to grow. So it's really about
Mm.
being consultative with that individual grower and finding out their individual needs to really to be able to provide a solution that they want. And we're a type of company that's going to be consultative with saying, look, your idea has some merits, but it may not, this is not going to help you in efficiency wise. There's actually a better way to do this. Let's talk about that and see where it goes, and again, we're not growers, we're tool makers, we're engineers. Now we've been dealing with growers, so we're as close to growers as you can be without being growers. But we want to rely on their expertise and what they want to do, and we want to try to make them happy with what they're getting. But we don't want to just obligatory to just say, okay, yes, you're absolutely right if we strongly disagree, because our end goal is to make sure that they have a sustainable business, right? And they're going off in the future. And so that's a key, to it, is making sure that you're providing the best solution operationally for the customer.
All right. Brilliant. Well, that makes a fine point upon which to wrap things up, I think. Um, yeah, thank you for that. I think we're going to take a short break now, slightly shorter than we planned because we've been chatting away here. But at 1:30, we're actually going to be joining a panel. I think you're going to be there with us, are you not?
I will.
So
Yes.
there's going to be a panel session in about 10 minutes' time that Kevin and I will be in, along with Philip from Fabric Air that you probably saw earlier or may have seen earlier, and Tania from Renewable as well. So yeah, take a short break, grab a coffee, do whatever you need to do, and then yeah, come and join us over in the panel session to round out the day. But in the meantime, just to say a huge thank you to all of you who've been here over the 2 days, and have joined us and have asked your questions and have got involved and seen all our speakers. A massive thank you to all our speakers over the 2 days, and a massive thank you to Jonathan, hidden though he often is, for pulling all of this together behind the scenes. Derek and I are just the kind of public faces who are out here chatting away, but yeah, Jonathan does an enormous amount of work to make this event a reality. So yeah, thank you to him and thank you to you all. And we'll hopefully see you in the panel very shortly.
Thank you, guys.